Hey, I get it when you're about to drop a few $100s on a piece of hardware you've never touched before. The what factor is huge. You're probably wondering if that Rackmount NAS will actually make your workflow smoother, or if you'll end up paying for features you never use. I've spent the last couple of weeks mapping out how an 8-bay unit like the QNAP TS864EU fits into a real office or studio, and I'm going to walk you through the practical side of things before you hit purchase. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, this isn't a hobbyist box you pop on a shelf for occasional backups. It's built for environments where several people need fast, reliable access to terabytes of data every day. Think a small video post-production team, a graphic design studio, or a tech startup that stores large code repositories and container images. The biggest hesitation I hear from folks is the fear of overpaying for raw horsepower they'll never tap, or ending up with a chassis that looks great on paper but becomes a bottleneck once the team actually starts moving files. That's why I focused on everyday scenarios: a designer pulling 4K assets for a client presentation, a dev team syncing massive Docker images, and a photographer backing up raw shoots straight from the camera. The TS864EU ships with an Intel Celeron N5105, a 4-core, 4-thread chip that can boost up to 2.9 GHz. In practice, that CPU handles simultaneous file transfers and light transcoding without breaking a sweat. For a typical office where you have a handful of people streaming 4K video to a conference room or rendering preview clips on the fly, the Celeron's performance is more than adequate. However, if you plan to run multiple virtual machines, heavy AI workloads, or full-blown 4K real-time transcoding for several streams at once, you'll start feeling the limits. In those cases, a higher-end Xeon-based NAS would be a better match. Memory is another sweet spot. The unit comes with 8 GB of DDR4 soldered on the board. For most file sharing and backup duties, that's plenty. QNAP's operating system is pretty efficient, and you'll see smooth multitasking when a few users are pulling data simultaneously. But if you intend to layer on a lot of app surveillance, deep learning inference, or a heavy suite of Docker containers, 8 GB can become a constraint. The good news is the board supports expansion up to 32 GB, so you can add more later, but that's an extra cost you need to budget for. Now let's talk networking, because that's where the high-speed claim really matters. The TS864EU has dual 2.5 GB ports that can auto-negotiate down to 1 GB or 100 MB if your switch is older. In a modern office with a 2.5 GB switch, you're looking at roughly 250 megabytes per second sustained transfer rates, double what you'd get on a standard gigabit line. I ran a simple test moving a 200 gigabytes project folder between two workstations on a 2.5 GB network, and the transfer wrapped up in just under 13 minutes, compared to about 28 minutes on a regular gigabit NAS. That's the kind of time saver that makes a noticeable impact when you're on a deadline. The 2M.2 PCIe Gen 31 slots for NVMe SSDs are a hidden gem. You can install a modest 250 gigabytes NVMe as a cache tier, and the NAS will automatically accelerate hot data. Think of the files you access daily, like recent project renders or frequently edited Photoshop assets. In real-world use, this means those same large files open in a snap, even though the bulk of your storage lives on slower SATA drives in the 8 bays. The trade-off is that you need to purchase those SSDs separately. The box is sold diskless, so you have to factor in the cost of drives and any cache SSDs you want. Speaking of the 8 bays, that's where the unit's value really shines. You can start with a couple of 4 TB NAS-grade HDDs for a 8 TB RAID 1 mirror and grow to a full 48 TB array as your data needs expand. The short-depth rack-mount design fits into tighter server rooms where depth is at a premium, but you do need a standard 19-inch rack to mount it. If you don't already have a rack, you'll need to buy one, which adds to the upfront expense. Also, because the chassis is relatively compact, the fans run a bit faster to keep temperatures in check, so you'll hear a low hum that's normal but can be noticeable in a quiet office environment. On the USB side, you get multiple USB 3.2 Gen 2 Type A ports that can hit up to 10 gigabits per second in theory. I used one of those ports to plug in an external SSD backup drive and was able to copy a 100 gigabytes folder in just under 3 minutes, pretty fast for a USB connection.